My name is Caleb Hart, and I grew up in a town where secrets don't stay buried. Not because people are nosy, but because they're loud. Loud with their opinions, loud with their judgments. Loud enough to make you believe you were wrong just for being quiet. I guess I always knew I was different. Not in a fireworks and confetti kind of way. More like a whisper in a thunderstorm. I was the kid who liked watching clouds instead of throwing footballs. The one who knew all the lyrics to Britney and Beyoncé before anyone else would admit to listening. I wasn't out, not officially, but I wasn't hiding either. I just existed in a strange middle space where everyone knew, and yet no one said a word. That silence was worse than being called names, honestly, because it came with looks. The kind that felt like laser beams slicing through your skin. You learn to shrink beneath those looks. You learn not to swing your arms when you walk, not to laugh too loudly, not to let your voice sound too soft. You learn how to disappear. I was 18 when this story happened, just a couple months out from my birthday. Legally an adult, but still stuck in the same dusty town with 2 gas stations, 1 Dairy Queen, and exactly 0 safe spaces. I had plans to leave after graduation, college, maybe a city. Maybe somewhere I didn't feel like I was constantly holding my breath. But at that point, I was still counting down the days. There wasn't much to do there, so I ran. Literally. Every morning, every evening. I'd lace up my sneakers and disappear down long, cracked sidewalks until my lungs burned and the noise in my head finally shut off. Running made me feel in control, even if it was just for 30 minutes. Music helped too. I kept a playlist of pop songs hidden on my phone like it was contraband. When no one was around, I'd turn it all the way up and pretend I was someone else, someone brave, someone free. My parents weren't cruel, just quiet. My dad worked construction, and my mom stocked shelves at the hardware store. We didn't talk about feelings. We talked about chores, school, and what was for dinner. I think they knew. I think everyone did. But it was like the entire town had made an unspoken agreement not to mention it, as if silence could protect them from whatever they didn't want to face. There were moments I felt like I had a neon sign on my forehead blinking gay in all caps. And even though no one ever said it out loud, I could feel it in the air, in locker rooms, in church pews, in every conversation where boys bragged about girls they didn't care about. I laughed along, I played the part, but I never really belonged. I don't know exactly when I started yearning for more. Maybe it was always there. Maybe it's just that at 18, something inside me cracked open. Like the world was getting louder, brighter, and all I had was static. I wanted to be wanted. Not in a dramatic movie scene kind of way. Just to be looked at without disgust. To be known without fear. I didn't expect anything to happen that day. It started like any other. Warm sun, the smell of spring in the air, and me trying to make it through another uneventful week. If you'd told me that by sunset, I'd be sitting in the front seat of a police cruiser next to a man who made me question everything I thought I knew about myself, I would have laughed. Or maybe I would have just run faster. But life has a strange way of handing you moments you're not ready for. And that day, well, that was the beginning of mine. That afternoon had all the makings of a perfect memory. The kind that wraps around your shoulders like sunlight through a car window. Warm, golden, harmless. School let out early, and Maya, my closest thing to a real friend, asked if I could give her a ride home. She lived on the far side of town, maybe 15 minutes from school, out past the newer developments and half-finished roads. It was a detour I didn't mind. It was spring, and the air was soft and full of that lazy kind of promise that only exists for teenagers in southern towns. We rolled the windows down, the sunroof open. My car smelled like cherry gum and cheap vanilla air freshener, and I let Britney play loud enough to drown out the silence we both seemed to crave. Maya danced in the passenger seat, mouthing lyrics and throwing me exaggerated looks every time I pretended not to sing along. For a few minutes, it felt like the world forgot who we were. I took a turn too fast onto an unfamiliar stretch. Newer pavement, no houses yet, just an empty sidewalk and a small brick school I'd never really paid attention to. The speed limit had dropped there recently. I hadn't noticed. I saw the flashing red and blue lights in my rear view before I even heard the siren. My stomach flipped. Oh, crap, I muttered, easing off the gas. I felt my face go hot as I pulled over to the shoulder. Maya's smile faded into a soft, sympathetic wince. "It's okay," she said. "You weren't doing anything crazy." I gave her a small nod and reached for my wallet. "Can you grab the registration from the glove box?" She fumbled with it while I turned off the music and waited, heartbeat thick in my ears. The officer's car pulled up behind us. His SUV was spotless, blinding under the sun, and I watched him step out in the side mirror. He was tall, like towering, built like someone who didn't just lift weights but relied on them. His uniform was crisp, the kind that hugs broad shoulders and powerful arms without trying. As he walked toward my window, I noticed the way he moved. Calm, steady, with a confidence that didn't need permission. He came up on my side. I looked up to greet him, but for a split second my eyes landed lower, right at his belt line. My brain scrambled to look up, and when I did, he was already watching me. One eyebrow arched, lips twitching like he was trying not to smile. "License and registration?" His voice was deep, not gravelly, but rich, like a low piano note. I handed him the documents with a quiet, "Yes, sir." "Do you know why I pulled you over?" he asked, eyes skimming the papers, then flicking back to me. "Yes," I admitted quickly. I think I was speeding. I didn't mean to. I forgot the limit changed on this street. I'm sorry." He nodded slowly, tilting his head. "You were going 36 in a 25. Also." His gaze drifted to my still glowing radio screen. "Your music was a little loud." I swallowed hard. "Yeah, sorry. Yeah." For a moment, he just stood there, not writing anything down, just studying me. His face softened, almost imperceptibly, and he leaned his elbow against the open window frame. "You seem like a sweet kid," he said, "but it's not a good look, especially speeding near a school. Come on, step out of the vehicle for a minute. Let's talk." The words landed with a weight I didn't understand. My heart thumped harder. Something in his voice, maybe the way it dipped at the end, felt off. Not threatening, not cruel, just not what I expected from a routine stop. Still, I nodded. "Okay." As I opened the door, he surprised me again by stepping back and holding it for me, like it was a date, like we were at a restaurant. I stood up and caught the faintest scent of his cologne, earthy, clean, something expensive. He leaned into Maya's window briefly. "Don't worry, he's not in real trouble. Just need to clear up a couple things." Then he turned back to me, placing a hand gently on the small of my back. The contact was brief, but it lit something in me I hadn't felt before. My breath caught. He didn't seem to notice, or maybe he did. He opened the door to his cruiser and gestured toward the passenger seat. "Hop in." I stared at the tidy stack of folders and loose paperwork piled there, unsure. He muttered a quick, "1 sec," cleared them with ease, and nodded again. "Go ahead." I climbed in, trying not to shake. He closed the door behind me, circled around, and slid into the driver's seat with a quiet click of the lock. That's when I finally saw his face up close. And he was beautiful. Not in a delicate way, but in that rugged, lived-in, masculine way you don't realize you're drawn to until it's sitting inches away from you. Square jaw, sun-kissed skin, piercing blue eyes, and a small scar on his cheekbone that made him look like he had stories he'd never tell. He glanced over at me once, then smiled. It wasn't polite. It wasn't cruel. It was knowing. And that's when I realized this wasn't just a traffic stop. The door shut behind him with a soft click, sealing us in. The cruiser smelled faintly of cologne, leather, and worn paper, somewhere between authority and intimacy. I sat stiffly in the passenger seat, hands in my lap, trying to breathe normally. Officer Logan Reyes adjusted his seat, flipped a notepad onto his thigh, and turned to look at me. The air between us felt oddly still, like time had slowed in this small, enclosed space. He didn't speak right away. Just looked. You always this honest? He finally asked, pen tapping against the pad. I blinked. Sorry? Most people make excuses. Try to play dumb. You didn't. I gave a nervous half-smile. I figured honesty was better than pretending I didn't see the speed limit. He chuckled under his breath, a low sound that made my stomach twist. Fair enough. His eyes flicked toward the radio console, where the now muted track title still glowed in soft digital light. Toxic, huh? My ears burned. It's her best song. He looked at me, one eyebrow raised. You don't strike me as the type who cares what people think. That made me laugh, but not in the funny way. More like a release valve for tension. Oh, I care, I said. Way more than I should. He nodded slowly, as if filing that away, then turned serious. So, here's what we've got. You were speeding, music was loud, and technically you should get hit with both. I swallowed, watching him jot something on the pad. Okay. But, he said, glancing sideways, I'm going to mark you down for 5 over instead of 11. It'll make the ticket cheaper. And I'll ignore the sound violation. Call it a favor. A favor? I echoed. He didn't answer. Just held out the citation and my license. His hand lingered when I reached for them. His thumb grazed mine. Just enough to notice. Just enough to question. And then, with a smirk, he said the thing that flipped my whole world sideways. There's a way to make the whole thing disappear, if you're interested. Silence. Like an inhale that never exhaled. My brain tripped over itself. Was that... Did he mean... No, he couldn't. I forced a laugh, unsure if it was the right move. Is that a joke? His smirk didn't fade. If anything, it deepened. Jokes usually come with punchlines. I stared at him, heart thudding. His posture was casual, like this was normal. Like he had all the time in the world. He tapped the edge of the ticket against his knee. I started, unsure what I was even responding to. What are you saying? He looked at me, not unkindly, but with a kind of cool amusement. I'm saying, life's full of choices. Some of them are easy, some, not so much. He pointed out the windshield, toward a long stretch of empty road beyond the trees. See that building over there? That little church? Parking lot's usually empty around this time of day. Just saying. I followed his finger, pulse roaring in my ears. The building was plain, brick, tucked away. I'd never noticed it before. Logan sat back, watching me. You don't have to do anything, Caleb. It's your call, but I'll be there for a bit. If you want to... talk. My cheeks burned. My throat tightened. I didn't know if I was flattered, offended, excited, or scared. Maybe all of them at once. He turned the ticket over and scribbled something on the back. That's my number, just in case you forget where to find me. I took the paper, fingers trembling. You do this often? His eyes locked with mine. No, I don't. He reached for the door handle and gave me a look that felt like it could see through every layer I had. You can go now, he said gently. Your friend's probably wondering what we're talking about. I climbed out of the car, the afternoon sun feeling harsher than before, like the air itself had changed. As I walked back to my car, the sound of the door closing behind me echoed louder than it should have. Maya looked up, concerned. But I just smiled and told her everything was fine. It wasn't a lie, but it wasn't the truth either. Maya didn't ask questions when I pulled up outside her house. She unbuckled her seatbelt, gave me a small smile, and said, "Thanks again, Caleb. Sorry for the drama." I nodded, gripping the wheel too tightly. "No problem. I'll see you tomorrow." She hesitated for half a second, like she could sense something beneath my polite calm. But then she opened the door and stepped out into the fading light. I watched her disappear into her front yard, waving once before vanishing behind the screen door. And then I was alone. I sat there for a long moment, staring blankly through the windshield. My hands were still trembling slightly. I could feel the warmth of the paper, the ticket, in my pocket. The digits he wrote on the back seared into my thoughts like they were glowing. I reached up and ran a hand through my hair. What had just happened? He didn't say anything outright. Not exactly. But it wasn't nothing either. The way he looked at me. The way he said, "If you're interested." Like he knew something about me I hadn't said aloud. Like he could see through me. Like he was inviting me to walk through a door I hadn't known was open. Or maybe I was reading too much into it. Maybe it was all in my head. A moment inflated by adrenaline and heat and the surreal intimacy of sitting inches from someone who radiated confidence like sunlight. But then again, he did write his number on the back of a traffic ticket. And he did say he'd be in that parking lot. My eyes flicked to the clock on the dashboard. Only 10 minutes had passed. I pulled away from Maya's house, heart thudding like a drum, and drove aimlessly through the neighborhood. I knew where that lot was now. He had pointed right at it. It wasn't even 5 minutes from where we were. Pulled over. I told myself I was just passing through. Just taking a drive. Just clearing my head. But the truth was, I was heading straight there. The sun had dipped lower by the time I reached it, the shadows stretching longer across the pavement. The church building sat quiet and still, the lot behind it completely empty, except for one familiar SUV parked near the back edge, angled slightly toward the road like it had been waiting. He was leaning against the driver's side door, hands in his pockets, head tilted down slightly, waiting. My heart nearly stopped. It was him. Logan Reyes, the uniform, the height, the posture. There was no mistaking him. He wasn't on his phone, wasn't checking a clipboard. He was just standing there, still, calm, watching, waiting. I slowed as I approached the turn into the lot. Our eyes met for a split second, and something in me panicked. I didn't stop. I kept driving. My breath caught, and I felt my face flush with heat and shame and something else. Something sharp and hollow that echoed in my chest. I drove another 2 blocks before pulling over in a quiet cul-de-sac. My hands gripped the steering wheel so hard my knuckles turned white. Why didn't I stop? Why didn't I turn in? Why did I feel like I'd just walked away from the edge of something I wasn't sure I wanted, but couldn't stop thinking about? I sat there for what felt like hours. Part of me hated him. Hated the way he made me feel seen. Not in the soft, safe way, but in the exposed, disarming way. Like he could read every desire I'd worked so hard to bury. But another part of me wanted to go back. Wanted to know what he would have said if I'd pulled in. If I'd rolled down the window. If I'd asked what he really meant. But I didn't. I drove home in silence. No music. No wind. Just the low hum of tires against asphalt, and the relentless, unspoken what if circling through my mind like a ghost. When I finally walked into my room, the sunset was bleeding gold through my blinds. I dropped the ticket on my desk without looking at it. I peeled off my shirt, sat on the edge of the bed, and just breathed. I didn't know what had happened exactly, but I knew something in me had shifted. Not because of what Logan Reyes said, but because of what he made me feel. Not fear, not shame. Desire. Real. Electrifying, bone-deep desire. And maybe for the first time, I didn't want to run from it. Something changed after that afternoon. Not in a dramatic, movie-style way. There was no lightning strike, no coming-out speech, no midnight declaration under the stars. Just a shift. Quiet. Subtle. But real. I noticed it the next morning when I caught my reflection in the mirror. I looked the same. Same messy curls, same tired eyes, same mouth that always looked a little too soft for someone trying to blend in. But something in the way I looked back at myself had changed, like I was seeing someone I'd never really let myself see before. Someone curious. Someone full of questions. Someone I didn't hate. That feeling stayed with me. I started playing music louder in my car. Not obnoxiously, not enough to get pulled over again, but enough that I could feel the bass in my chest. I rolled down the windows even when it was too cold. I stopped flinching when someone saw me singing along. Sometimes I even let myself smile, when a favorite line hit just right. At school, nothing outwardly changed. I was still quiet, still careful, still the guy who edited the yearbook layout and left early from pep rallies. But inside, I was different. I started journaling again. Not just about school or stress, but about him. About Logan. About the way his eyes didn't judge me. About how he didn't flinch when he said sweet kid or pretty boy. About the smirk that danced on the edge of suggestion, but never quite crossed the line. He hadn't done anything. Not really. He hadn't touched me. At least, not in a way that would make headlines or raise alarms. But he made me feel something I hadn't let myself feel before. Wanted, seen. Even if it was just a moment. Even if it wasn't meant to last. Even if it was inappropriate, or reckless, or maybe even dangerous. I saw him once more that week. I was walking out of the grocery store, earbuds in, a bag of snacks in one hand. I looked up just as a patrol car turned out of the parking lot. It was him, Logan. He glanced my way, slowed just slightly, and then nodded. Subtle, polite, but unmistakably direct. Like a silent acknowledgement between two people who shared something they couldn't name. I nodded back. Nothing more. That night I wrote about it in my journal, about the silence, the look, the way my chest tightened like a secret trying to speak. I didn't know what I wanted from him, if anything. I just knew I hadn't stopped thinking about that parking lot, about what could have happened, what didn't, and what it meant that I almost turned in. I told myself I made the right choice by not stopping, by keeping my distance. But sometimes, in the quiet moments just before sleep, I'd let myself imagine a version of the story where I had pulled in. Not a fantasy. Not a scene from something explicit. Just a conversation, a moment, a what if. And strangely, that made it easier to breathe, not harder. I started watching people differently, not with suspicion, but with new eyes. I noticed how two boys in the cafeteria sat a little too close, how one of them touched the other's sleeve when he laughed, how no one else seemed to care. I'd never allowed myself to see that before, to believe it could exist in real life. But it did. And maybe, just maybe, it could for me too. Not right away, not here, but someday. That moment with Logan Reyes wasn't love. It wasn't romance. And it definitely wasn't a fairy tale. But it was a beginning. A crack in the shell I'd built around myself. A chance to stop holding my breath and start listening to the parts of me I'd been afraid to hear. I wasn't ready to shout who I was from the rooftops. But I wasn't hiding anymore, either, and, for now, that was enough. The sky was unusually clear that morning. Soft blue, no clouds, no threat of rain. A breeze rolled over the football field, warm enough to lift the corners of the folding chairs and send tassels fluttering like tiny flags of freedom. It was graduation day. The kind of day that's supposed to feel like an ending and a beginning. At the same time, my gown didn't fit right. It was too big in the shoulders and the fabric itched at the back of my neck. But I didn't care. I had made it. Somehow, despite everything, despite the whispers, the silences, the second-guessing, I was here. About to walk across a stage and shake hands with people who had never really seen me. Not completely. And that was okay, because I saw me now. They called names alphabetically. My row shuffled forward slowly, one name at a time, one applause at a time. I kept my head down until I heard someone behind me gasp softly and say, "Oh my God, cops again?" I looked up, and there he was, Officer Logan Reyes, leaning against a temporary barricade near the bleachers, arms crossed, sunglasses on, badge, shining in the sun like it belonged in a movie. I hadn't seen him in weeks, but seeing him now, I didn't freeze, I didn't panic, I just looked, and he looked back. Even from across the field, I could feel the spark of recognition between us, brief, electric, undeniable. He lifted his sunglasses just slightly, revealing those same piercing eyes that had once seen straight through me. Then he gave me that look again, the one I hadn't stopped thinking about. Not a smile. Not exactly. A smirk. Crooked. Knowing. And then, a wink. Subtle. Just for me. My heart stuttered. But I didn't. Look away. I let the corners of my mouth rise, just enough. I nodded once. A quiet, thank you maybe. a silent acknowledgement of everything that had passed between us, and everything that hadn't. Then I turned forward, facing the stage. By the time I walked across and shook the principal's hand, my thoughts had quieted. I wasn't worried about the future, or the past, or the what-ifs that used to haunt me. I was just present. Later, when the ceremony ended and families swarmed the field with hugs and photographs, I searched for Logan through the crowd, but he was gone, vanished like smoke. I never saw him again after that, and honestly, I didn't expect to, because he was never really meant to stay. Logan Reyes wasn't some perfect love story. He wasn't my first kiss, or my first heartbreak, or the man I'd write songs about in college. He was something else. He was the match, the spark that lit the fuse. He was the one who didn't flinch when he saw me, the one who said "pretty boy" like it wasn't an insult, the one who offered me a choice, even if it wasn't the kind I was ready to make. And in a strange way, he gave me permission, not to be someone else, but to finally be me. So no, we never spoke again. But I stopped being afraid of who I was, all because of a man who pulled me over one afternoon and looked at me like I was worth knowing. And somehow, that was enough.